Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. Netflix released an extra bonus episode for Stranger Things Season 5, basically detailing all behind the scenes, a bunch of deleted scenes from the making of Season 5. So we'll break it all down, all the new revelations and the things we didn't know about before going in. There were a couple really big reveals. Some of them cool, some of them not so cool. There are some things that people are getting really upset about, so I'll explain what's going on and what happened with the whole conformity gate theory that people were coming up with. I talked about that in a previous video, but there's just a lot of talk been going on about that the past week. So what I'll try to do is go through the episode WTF moments, big reveals, big WTF reveals, like disaster reveals, in a linear way as much as possible, but some of these will be out of order. Probably the first big thing that everyone's mostly getting upset about, like the most upset of all things. People are upset for a lot of reasons, but probably the biggest thing is the Duffers say very clearly at the beginning of the episode that they went into production for episode 1, like they actually started filming episode 1 without a finished script for the final episode, the ending of the actual series. So they didn't really know how they're going to end things, even though they knew that something was going to happen with 11. She was going to have to go away. So there was also a really big talk, a big argument about how they're going to end 11's story. Were they going to kill her off? They specifically talk about her ending her own life. Or were they going to end in a more ambiguous way? Or were they going to end with her having a moment with Hopper, which they felt like would confirm that she was going to save herself, like she was going to escape? They also did other interviews after the finale dropped separate from this, where I think they give more evidence that 11 did actually survive, and they were thinking about 11 surviving when they were actually writing the finale, and they just put part of that in the actual documentary episode. So if it wasn't clear, the documentary is heavily edited. It's only 2 hours long or so it's not the entire conversation when they're talking about 11's ending in the room, or the fact that they don't have a finished script for most of production for the actual finale, so they don't know exactly how the ending is going to go down for most of their filming. You're really just getting a brief snapshot before they move on to the next moment later in the timeline. Some of you probably already knew this, but if you didn't realize, most Hollywood movies, especially really big ones and TV shows, don't have finished scripts for the end of their series or like the end of their season before they start filming it. Now, Stranger Things is a TV show, not a movie, but even on the biggest movies, like they're filming Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars right now, Marvel did not have finished scripts for Avengers Doomsday when they were filming. Even the X-Men actors who came back were talking about this, how they didn't actually have finished scripts each day. It was the same thing during Avengers Infinity War, Avengers Endgame, and most TV series shoot for like 10 to 14 episodes per season. Stranger Things was 9 episodes per season during season 4. It is very rare for series that have that many episodes to have finished scripts for the finale when they start filming. That does not mean that it's a good idea. It would be much better if they actually had finished scripts for the finale when they were going into filming so they could actually build that into the early episodes, which is why when you watch the first half of Stranger Things Season 5, like Volume 1, and even some of Volume 2, it feels very tonally different from Volume 3, like from the actual finale episode. A lot of this, I think, is because they actually finished writing the finale and they did most of Volume 2, like they wrote most of Volume 2 after the writer's strike. So there was like a big break between the time when they wrote Volume 1 and when they were writing Volume 2 and Volume 3. This is also why you heard about a lot of deleted scenes, a lot of moments, a lot of things that just didn't make it into the final cut. They talk about some of that during the actual episode here. Really deep cut Easter egg, they also revealed the basement scene with Season 1, Episode 1 of the kids playing Dungeons & Dragons before Will gets yoinked by the Demogorgon was the first scene that they ever wrote for the series when they were writing it for Netflix. We get a lot of scenes in this episode from them in the writer's room, which will either infuriate you or just confuse you in a couple cases. A lot of people think that it looks like they have tabs open for ChatGPT and they used AI to write some of the scripts. I don't know if that's true. I can't quite see because the text is so blurry here, but that is possible. They also have a tab open to Reddit, so they were actually looking at Stranger Things subreddit theories while they were writing the finale.
We went into production without having a finished script for the finale. That was scary.
There was a Mind Flayer battle with Will that was scrapped. Joyce was originally going to go to the lab with Hopper in 11's group, but instead they sent her with the teens group to go to the Abyss. And obviously they let Joyce be the one to actually deal the killing blows, multiple blows, because it took her a couple hacks to actually kill him. This is mostly because Joyce had kind of turned into this background character after the first season. So if you remember, Joyce was actually like the big character in Season 1. Winona Ryder was like the big get for the series, like the only real big star. The kids turned into big stars, like Millie Bobby Brown turned into a really big star over the course of the show. So this is why over the next couple of seasons, like season 2, season 3, season 4, the show really pivoted to be more about the kids themselves and less about the other bigger characters during season 1, which was Winona Ryder's Joyce. So Winona Ryder had kind of moved into the background. She had barely any speaking lines at all during season 5, which is probably why they let her have the killing blow. When you watch the stage play, Stranger Things First Shadow, you actually get way more of her connection with Henry Creel, but on the show, they never actually referenced that. The Duffers actually spoke about this because they said the Stranger Things stage play is still actually playing in theater. You can actually go see it. There's only playing a couple places in the world, but you can still go see it. And apparently, even though it contains critical backstory that you need to know for Henry Creel's backstory, Vecna's backstory, and how he's connected to Joyce and all the other characters inside Hawkins, especially the older characters, they didn't want to reveal that in the series. Also, most of the people that were watching Stranger Things Season 5 did not have the opportunity to go see the stage play. So it just wound up being this really weird situation. Probably one of the worst ideas that they have. Like, they could have just done a prequel series or even a single prequel episode, like 2 hours for Henry Creel's backstory. That is all you need to fix a whole bunch of problems with a lot of these scenes, especially with Joyce and Henry Creel at the end. This is why Joyce never references knowing Henry Creel that they were at high school with. So in the idea of the stage play, and when she's traveling through the high school and she's seeing the younger version of all the kids' parents, like, oh, these were our parents during the 1950s. Henry Creel was at school with them, and he was in a stage play with one of his love interests, Patty Newby. Things go completely off the rails because Brenner was performing experiments on him, and the Mind Flayer was inside his body trying to get him to do evil things. So it ends up having a very tragic ending, but Joyce is a big part of that. That's why you saw the young version of Joyce putting on the stage play. Henry Creel acted in her stage play, but they never reference that, like she never makes the connection. But during the stage play, she's also wielding an axe, which is the reason why she killed Henry Creel, Vecna, with an axe inside the Mind Flayer's body. Problem is, though, is that most people didn't know that backstory, that connection, so it just winds up falling a little bit flat. Like, why is she there with an axe instead of a gun? Why is she there at all? When you know the full backstory, the connection between the characters, then it makes way more sense, which is why they should have put the stage play on Netflix. They did say when they started to write the actual finale episode, it was 3 hours long. There was a 3-hour version of it that they had planned. That might have actually been enough to pay off a lot of this Henry Creel backstory in a full way. One of the big deleted scenes, especially during the finale, was that they were going to find a field of Demogorgon eggs meant to look like alien eggs. If you look at the documentary, Matt Duffer wears this alien t-shirt on a bunch of different days. I think it's just one of his favorite shirts, so he just wore it a long time during production, because production lasted for a long time. So each time you see him wearing it in the documentary, it's on different days. But when the teens go to the Abyss, they were meant to find a field of Demogorgon eggs meant to look like the alien eggs that they find on the engineer ship in the first Alien movie. There was a big argument that the writers' room had, the Duffers had with the other writers, about there being more creatures, Demogorgons, Demo-Bats, just like other Demo dogs on the Abyss, not just the Mind Flayer and the kids and Vecna.
Be some monsters in the Abyss.
I agree.
There has to be Demogorgon, bat, dog, like something. It's crazy if there's nothing there, I think.
The actual reason why it wound up being so devoid of other life, like it was just the Mind Flayer, Vecna, and the kids, was because one of the other writers was able to argue them out of using more creatures, saying that they thought that it was going to be Demogorgon fatigue. So this is like one of the other writers that was able to argue their point successfully, and the Duffers just agreed with that. So it was the Duffers that then decided not to do more Demogorgons and other creatures on the Abyss.
Wonder about demo fatigue at the...
Yeah, I mean, that's fair.
I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, like just having more creatures on the Abyss wouldn't necessarily fatigue me seeing more creatures running around attacking the kids. Probably one of the other big reveals is that Holly Wheeler and the 12 new kids, like the younger group of kids, Derek's group, weren't originally going to be part of Season 5. I think the reason why the Duffers decided to include them is because they wanted so much to loop this back around and have it call back to the original season where it was a bunch of little kids against evil forces, in this case, obviously Vecna and the Mind Flayer. But they made such a big deal about the older kids now who used to be the younger kids passing the baton, like basically putting away their childhoods and passing the baton in the form of the Dungeons & Dragons game to the new kids who was Holly's group, which is why they had the scene at the very end of the finale. So if you go back and you watch the end of season 4, episode 9 with like all the cracks opening up and like just all hell breaking loose in Hawkins, and in the beginning of season 5, it seems like they really wanted to reset the show to more of a season 1 status quo where you have a bunch of little kids going to school, facing problems, and they just kind of glossed over a lot of the stuff that happened at the end of season 4. Like, we're not going to deal with that. We're just going to get back to the vibe that we had during season 1. This is also why Holly Wheeler felt like she became the new main character for Stranger Things. Literally, she has more screen time in season 5 than Will has, and the Duffer said that Will was meant to be the heart and soul of season 5, mostly because they wouldn't like focus so much on his character in season 5 going into it when they were writing it, because they had done him such a disservice after season 2, saying that after season 2, he kind of been stunted in development, and the character wasn't really getting the same kind of development that other characters were getting, that they were spending time on. So if you're mad the show dropped the ball with Will after season 2, the Duffers do cop to that during the episode, but also they probably could have spent way more time developing Will, and a lot of the scenes it sounds like that they got rid of when they were actually writing, they didn't end up filming because they didn't have time, because they spent so much more time on Holly and the other little kids that they probably didn't need to have. Personally, I feel like they could have fixed a lot of these problems by pulling way back on those little kids and just replacing some of their storyline with the actual main character kids. Like, just have Vecna steal some of the main character kids instead. One of the next big reveals is actually why Vecna was so obsessed with Holly Wheeler in the 12 Kids, why he stole 12 Kids in particular, and it actually comes from Jamie Campbell Bower, who plays Vecna, Henry Creel, not from the Duffer Brothers, and this is something that he came up with on the day that he had started filming his scenes, so I do consider it canon because he talks to Matt and Ross Duffer, and they're like, oh yes, that's an amazing idea, let's go with that. And the whole reason why he was so obsessed with Holly Wheeler specifically is because Holly Wheeler is meant to look very much, almost exactly like Henry Creel's younger sister. You remember that he killed her when he was younger, so it makes more sense why he'd be obsessed with her in present day. And the other real reason why he stole 12 Kids in particular, there are really two reasons. One, because the psychic power that he was able to leech off of them gave him more power, so he did like the extra power. But the real reason, according to Jamie Campbell Bower, and the Duffers did agree with this, is that Vecna, Henry Creel, was basically treating them like little friends that he didn't have when he was younger. So part of the idea is that when Henry Creel was a young boy, he had no friends.
Right.
Yeah.
And I had no friends.
It's sad.
And sad. And gives it a purpose.
The saddest, most put upon, most abused little boy you could probably imagine, because Brenner was abusing him on a daily basis. And the whole reason why he took them to this perfect looking vision of his house is because it was supposed to be a memory of what Henry Creel wanted his home to be like when he was a child, but it never was, like a perfect but false memory. So essentially Henry Creel here was stealing all these little kids and making them his friends, turning them into his friends, and putting them to live inside his perfect memory the way he wanted it to be when he was a child. But even though it was a lie, like it was not a perfect family, it was not a perfect house. Jamie Campbell Bower said they just made the character of Henry Creel of Vecna way, way sadder, way, way darker. So if you wonder why they made such a big deal about the 12 kids in the episodes, that's the actual story-based context reason. The real reason, I think, is the Duffers just like the idea of 12 kids being strung up inside the rib cage of the Mind Flayer. And they did refer to this place where they were all strung up inside its belly as the rib cage, and they referred to it as the pain tree when they were actually filming the scenes. One of the other interesting details, too, is the Duffer Brothers actually had the production crew working on filming and producing these sets for The Abyss, like the whole Mind Flayer body itself, like this giant construction, without any actual script. So the production crew actually did a pretty good job trying to create this without having any kind of notes from the Duffers. There was a long clip of Sean Levy when he was filming his episodes, like the melting office scene inside Hawkins' laboratory where you have Jonathan and Nancy that are about to die inside the goo. There was this huge problem they had where nothing worked the way they wanted it to or the way they had planned it to. So Sean Levy had this big segment in the episode about fixing problems on the day. He makes a lot of references to going into full Jedi mode, like he says locking in for him is going into Jedi director mode. This was actually filmed before he was hired by Lucasfilm to direct the Star Wars movie Starfighter with Ryan Gosling. Just a funny coincidence that he's making Star Wars Jedi references before he's hired by Lucasfilm to do an actual Star Wars movie. And even though Sean Levy did talk about a lot of problems they had when they were filming, things that were going wrong and not blowing his stack because things weren't working out the way they wanted to, that happens on pretty much every TV show, every movie in Hollywood. It's not an abnormal thing. There are always problems that happen day to day. But if you couldn't tell, yes, there were many disasters that happened during the production of Stranger Things Season 5. Some of them are more obvious than others. The very first scene that they shot for Season 5, Episode 1 originally started with Hopper having to suit up montage, armor up montage in their basement secret lair of the radio station, and then having their meeting before he actually goes on the crawl mission itself. All the different actors had their own segments where they're talking about their characters and the events of Season 5 and just like putting the entire series in context, because all of the kids started on the series when they were like 12 or younger. Like they've been on the show for half of their lives, basically. But probably one of the funniest details of all these interviews, I mean, it's kind of sad and poignant, but Millie Bobby Brown, if you notice, she's inside the room here, inside the cabin, with a bloody nose, and during all of her interview portions, she still has the bloody nose. They actually said that it was her idea to do that, like she wanted to have the bloody nose while she was doing the interview, just to have a bit of a laugh. So if you wonder why Millie Bobby Brown has a constant bloody nose while she's talking to the camera between all the actual segments, that's why. She also said she had a very strong connection with the Duffers because she came up with it. Like basically this was like her first real big show that made her a huge star, and now she is a very big star. So I wouldn't be surprised if she shows up in one of the Duffers' new movies or TV shows at Paramount, because they're leaving Netflix to go to Paramount to make movies and TV shows, all because Netflix didn't want to release their movies in theaters, and that was like a real big deal for them. So like that was the whole thing that caused them to want to leave Netflix.
Half of my life.
Netflix is still proceeding with a whole bunch of Stranger Things spin-offs. The first live-action one, they've already said, is actually going to explain what was in Henry Creel's briefcase that he opens up that the scientists he stole off of him, that special rock that contained part of the Mind Flayer. So I think this confirms that it's actually going to be a prequel, and it'll be more of an X-Files type of show, and it'll deal more with the exotic matter in Brenner's father. Like a whole lot of Project Rainbow stuff that eventually led to Brenner's program, The Exotic Matter, and The Bridge to the Abyss. We actually learned that Holly Wheeler's teacher is actually teaching them Wrinkle in Time during the events of Season 5. The class is studying the Wrinkle in Time book, which is why so much of the season relied on the lore from that book, like calling Henry Creel's memories Camzots, like they had to escape from Camzots, and also thinking of him as the Black Thing, the villain from the Wrinkle in Time universe. They also revealed that Holly Wheeler's actual teacher was the Duffers' real-life high school teacher, who they credit with a lot of their beginnings, big inspiration, and learning how to be creatives when they were little kids too. So it'd be like you getting famous, making your own movie or TV show, and then like casting your teachers from when you were a kid in your thing. A lot of the episode focuses specifically on the Sorcerer episode, Season 5, Episode 4, with the big scene of them filming around the Max Z gate with Will going into full Sorcerer mode and the actual finale itself. So when they're doing the bits about Episode 4 when Will goes full Sorcerer, you actually notice that the concept art shows more black smoke coming out of all the Demogorgons. We got a little bit of that during the episodes, but the black smoke was actually meant to be particles of the Mind Flayer, which was used to create the connection between all the organic beings. It was inside the people too, like the little kids, which came out of them when they were unhooked from the Mind Flayer. Yes, I do think that when Vecna and the Mind Flayer died, black particles should have come out of Will's mouth. They do not address this during the documentary episode, and they don't address this in any of the interviews after they did the finale, but I do think that at some point, black particles would have come out of Will's mouth as well too. The whole reason why the black particles didn't come out of Eleven's mouth or Kali's mouth is because they got their powers biologically through Henry Creel's blood, who got his powers from the Mind Flayer. So anybody that has powers on the show at all for any reason got them originally because of the Mind Flayer. So when the Mind Flayer jumps into Henry Creel's body, it changes his eye color, and that's when he actually gets his powers. Brenner then took his blood and used it to create Eleven, Kali, the other people in their program. So all those kids got their powers biologically, which is why Eleven still has her powers after the Mind Flayer and Vecna are dead. They had a lot of different ideas about what Vecna was going to look like, what the Mind Flayer's body was going to look like. You can let me know if you like the designs that they actually landed on. Some of them do look way wilder though. There are a couple moments when they're actually filming the final scene of them coming back through the Max C gate in the military, coming up on them, and Eleven escaping, where they're filming that scene. You can actually see her running behind the truck to go to the store. That was them filming the scene of Mike explaining to the kids how she could have survived. I talked about this in my last video, but in a better interview in my mind, like the Duffers actually in context trying to think about the entire series and the ending for 11, did seemingly reveal that she probably did survive, but they've sworn Millie Bobby Brown to secrecy, and she's never going to tell anybody what actually happened to her character, mostly so they don't trample on the ambiguity of the ending, whether or not you think it was successfully ambiguous. Personally, I think if they really wanted to be ambiguous with their ending, they would not have filmed the scene of her in Iceland with the 3 waterfalls to pay off Mike's scene. They would have just left it with him hearing the feedback in the speakers and then thinking maybe she did survive, and then just like never actually taking it beyond that.
So yeah, Ross and I know, and we were just talking to Millie about it, but I think it takes away the power of the ending if you tell people what you were thinking as you were writing it. Yeah, I was gonna say she's not going to tell you. She's not going to tell you either if you want to try to get that.
There was also an alternate ending for Vecna's character as well, too. So when he's about to be killed by Joyce, he's actually crying, like Vecna is crying, and you see little Henry Creel poking out, essentially, where he tells her, please, no, don't do this, where he basically begs for his life. But the reason why Jamie Campbell Bower said that they cut the scene is because they just felt like in the moment it wasn't working. So he actually did do that on set when they were filming his character's ending. Personally, I think if they had done a better job of establishing the connection between Joyce and Henry Creel that goes back to them being in high school together, it would have made more sense for him to have that moment where he begs for his life to her. But if you actually think about it, the scene of Joyce killing Vecna was the first and last scene that they ever filmed together. Joyce was never actually in any scenes on screen with Henry Creel Vecna besides what we see in episode 4, like when she's actually yelling at him from across the field here. I think this is mostly a result of them coming up with the Vecna character in general, like the way that he's visualized with Jamie Campbell Bower late in the process after they had done season 3 and they were getting ready to do season 4. Like, we should do a character that looks like this. Also, the show beginning to turn and pivot more on the child characters and pushing Winona Ryder's Joyce more to the background, becoming more of a background character, getting less speaking lines in seasons. And the idea that the stage play largely dealt with this was not something that was incorporated into the actual series itself. Like, you had to go off somewhere else and see it, and it could only be seen a couple places in the world. So it just wound up being a lot of really cool lore that was just extra for the series, and they didn't have time to deal with in the actual episodes, which they probably should have actually made time to deal with it. And probably the biggest reason why the Duffers said that they didn't kill off more of the main character kids, like why so many of them survived the finale, is because they didn't want the finale to feel like too much of a downer ending, like too much of a bummer. But then when they went to see how big the full table read was, they joked that they should have killed off more characters. And yes, I do think that they probably should have killed off a few more characters. There were a lot of other minor moments in the background too, a lot of concept art, a lot of alternate designs, alternate reveals that they give off. So if there's anything that you saw that I didn't reference during the video or you have questions about, just write it below in the comments. I did a couple other videos on other deleted scenes, other alternate endings, so I will link those at the end of this because there is a lot of conversation, a lot of interviews that the Duffers did where they reveal different things interview to interview. When it actually comes to the whole conformity gate theory, no, I don't think that there's like a secret episode that they're actually sitting on, like a secret episode 9 that Netflix will just whisk out and reveal, like, oh, by the way, we filmed an entire extra episode. That episode that you watched that you thought was the finale was meant to be fake. I don't think that they went that far. I think this bonus episode is like the only extra episode that they did reveal. There's a lot of inconsistencies in the chain of custody and things during production, people being confused about things that make it seem like there might be a whole lot of stuff that isn't actually there. But I will hand it to all the conformity gate theorists out there. They definitely did their homework. Like, there are a lot of good bits of evidence of things out there that they have been able to find, but I still don't think ultimately it's going to wind up leading to an actual episode 9. Everybody post all your reactions in the comments below, and if there's any Easter eggs, references, big reveals that you spotted during the bonus episode that I didn't talk about during this video, just write them below in the comments and I'll add it into my future videos. Everybody click here and here for all my Stranger Things finale videos, alternate endings, deleted scenes, Easter eggs. There is a lot there. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.